Chabot. Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I thank him for his leadership as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Mr. Goodlatte has done an excellent job there, and we appreciate the work on this bill and many other things as well. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of H.R. 5982, the Midnight Rules Relief Act, introduced by my friend and colleague from California, Mr. Issa. Over the last 8 years, the Obama administration has gone, let's face it, on a regulatory rampage. Each year, the administration's major rules have cost over $100 billion. $100 billion. A disproportionate share of those enormous costs have fallen on America's 28 million small businesses. As chairman of the House Small Business Committee, I've heard firsthand from the owners and employees of these small businesses in our hearing room and also back home in my district in Cincinnati, Ohio, how these new regulations have harmed them personally. And I want to emphasize that it doesn't just hurt the owner of this small business, but all those folks who work for them. And sometimes that's 2 people, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. It affects them and their families, and generally it's very adversely. And I think it's critical that we realize that about 70% of the new jobs that are created in the American economy nowadays are created by these small businesses that have been basically, they've had these regulations that this administration has imposed on them. It's like a wet blanket over them and over this economy. So this particular legislation is absolutely critical. It's critical that we pass it. The last time, really the last thing that these small businesses need right now is a new flood of new regulations from the president's army of bureaucrats as they beat a hasty retreat out of Washington. Outgoing presidents oftentimes push through new regulations in the final days of their administrations to lock in as much of their agenda as possible. And let's face it, on Election Day, that agenda was, for the most part, rejected. And to allow an administration to impose even more bureaucracy and more regulations onto the small business community and on the American people is just something that we should not allow to happen. And that's why this legislation has been introduced. These so-called midnight rules are thrown together hastily with little analysis or regard for the costs and burdens that they'll impose on Americans' entrepreneurs. Sadly, the administration has given every indication that they will be ramping up, not slowing down, the red tape dispenser over the next 9 weeks. This common sense bipartisan legislation will give Congress, the elected representatives of the American people after all, the power to stop all midnight rules with one vote. Next weekend we will celebrate Small Business Saturday, an opportunity to celebrate small businesses and recognize that they are a key to making our economy succeed. Midnight regulations are an imminent threat to their success. So let's not spoil Small Business Saturday by having a whole bunch of new regulations, new red tape, new things that they have to deal with other than actually doing things which will make their business successful so that they can actually make a profit and hire more people. Let's not allow the bureaucrats here in Washington to spoil that. I would urge my colleagues to pass this bill and send a clear message to our small businesses all across America that we have their back and regulatory relief is on the way. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia.